Welcome to the first episode of the series with Ghanashyam Govinda Prabhuji. This is a long series, but if you pay attention and if you stick with it, I assure you that you will find something of value. His Grace Ghanashyam Govinda Prabhu is a 44-year-old monk and dedicated practitioner of the ancient Vedic science of Bhakti Yoga. A dynamic and scholarly figure, he possesses deep expertise not only in spiritual sciences but also in material sciences. Beginning his career as a software engineer, he worked for various organizations across Australia. However, driven by an inner quest for a higher purpose, he encountered Bhakti Yogis nearly 20 years ago through the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, in short, ISKCON. Deeply inspired by their teachings and way of life, he chose to fully dedicate himself to the path of Bhakti Yoga. Since then, His Grace Ghanashyam Govinda Prabhu has travelled extensively delivering thought-provoking lectures, conducting insightful workshops, and guiding seekers on the path of devotion, self-realization, and holistic well-being. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to him for interacting with us. Before moving on, let's briefly explore a recurrent theme in the talk: selective projection. Let's say we have a sentence consisting of words formed by arranging a bunch of letters, that is, gravity ordered disorder. This sentence is part of a larger idea that at the time when the universe was formed, matter arranged itself into ordered systems like the solar system, the galaxies, etc., due to intergravitational attraction over time. However, if I focus only on the first letter of each word in this sentence, that is G, O, and D, it results in the word God. This word has a meaning in itself, but if it has been derived out of selectively focusing on the alphabets of words in a sentence, there is a complete loss of information of the original meaning of the sentence. Only if a persistent effort is made to see the diverse combination of alphabets eventually leading up to the forming of the sentence can its true meaning be illuminated and preserved. Salvador Dali's double image paintings serve as a visual example. Herein, it is easy to see a human skull in the image, formed by careful organization and selective emphasis on the elements of an event like a party. Looking closely, you would find two women sitting together with a bunch of glasses. Similarly, you might be able to detect the faces in these two paintings, the second one being on a horizontal axis left to right. The contrasts, color, and elements have been intentionally adjusted for the perception of the face. Thus, this enhancement of selective elements of a situation gives rise to an illusion of the face, and therefore the idea of the face alone cannot seek to represent the entire situation from which it has been made to emerge. A closer look at the individual de-emphasized elements would trigger the perception of meanings, revealing the reality of the situation that otherwise could have been missed. Could it rather be that the face is the actual reality, only waiting for it to be revealed to the keen, and the elements of the situation are the actual illusion, a mere excuse for the face to emerge within human parameters? Or has it been intentionally projected only for generating interest towards the situation whose representation it initially seemed to compromise? Or something totally different? Only Salvador Dali knows. But who knows when it comes to religious narratives? I just want to say, first of all, that the questions that I'm asking, the source of the question is not to challenge anything. It is genuinely to be able to understand. Like, I'm really curious about these things. It is not that I'm trying to challenge or anything like that. So without further ado, can I just ask my question? Can I just start off asking questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So first question that I was intrigued by, I want to know I want to understand, because first I will understand what the soul means a little later. But initially, I want to ask about the soul of conjoined twins. Do you happen to know what conjoined twins are?
Yeah.
So they share like the brain and sometimes other body parts as well. And it is said that they are able to think on each other's behalf. Like if I want my conjoined twin to move my arm,
I can mentally tell him to do that and he can move my arm. What they cannot do so far is share knowledge. So I wanted to know that do they collectively have a single soul or do they both have separate souls? And what is the threshold that determines that kind of differentiation?
Good question. They do have two souls. They are two separate individuals. The only difference is rather than each soul taking its own body, the arrangement there is they have to actually share the same body. So in places you will actually see even conjoined, sometimes one person dies, they'll operate out the one part actually, and they still keep the other one. So the other one is still alive.
Okay.
So definitely they are two separate souls, but they are sharing. Even within our body, if you see in one sense, we think we are the occupier of this body, but there are many bacteria, there are many microorganisms inside our body, and they are thinking they own this.
Yeah,
But we
exactly.
think we own this actually. Okay, so even though co-joined, they are like two separate individuals sharing the same body, it's two separate souls. And there are instances when they have to, like, one person dies or one person's, heart starts to actually work, then they actually push it out, and they operate out one half and they just return the other.
Okay, thank you. This actually, you mentioned the second question that I had, that there are many bacteria and many microbiota that exist in the body, and they are living organisms, and our life is dependent upon them. So there are many things, there are many biologists who say that if we remove these particular organisms from the body cannot sustain itself without the symbiosis. So I'm assuming that these organisms also have their own souls.
Absolutely.
So when these particular organisms they are removed from our body, I would then deduce that our own soul would also be removed.
Okay, the way how it works is we are talking two different things here. Let's
Okay.
first be clear in terms of the contribution of these other living entities who are within our body.
Okay.
They are required for maintenance of this body, definitely. Even as modern science actually says, they are required.
Okay.
Okay. Now, at what point will they actually be going out? Usually, you have you come across maggots theory?
Maggots theory? Not really.
So
I'm not very
basically,
good.
what they have done is they wanted to study whether at what point life comes out of this body. When a person is actually at the time of death, for example, you can Google and see. So
Yes, yes.
then what they have actually realized is they studied a dead body. As soon as a person was actually dead, immediately they immediately they incubated it from influence of any other external, entities. You don't want a fly to come in there, lay its eggs and everything, for example.
Hmm.
Then they studied it. Then they suddenly start to see maggots coming out, worms coming out of that. And now they are puzzled. Is body the source of all of them? Initially, they promoted that. When a body is actually decaying, the body is giving rise to new living organisms. And then upon much scrutiny, they have actually realized that the source of those maggots are not the body itself, but it's these flies or external entities which come and lay their eggs or which come and have their influence in the body even before it is dead. So when
Okay.
you are dead now, it's only for these organisms which just work like a scavenger. They just take whatever that's there and now they have actually come out. It's one of the most popular theories in 20th century, but then got debunked later by scientists themselves, saying body doesn't give rise to any new living organisms per se, unless some other external living entity comes and lays its eggs or some other way it is actually injected into the body. Body is not the source of anything. Anyway, the point I'm saying here is the two things here we are talking. One is the presence of soul, and the second is the maintenance of the body. The soul goes through the journey in this body, observing the body go through different phases. Okay, if you go by the scriptures talk about 6 different changes, transformations this body goes through. Okay, there
Hmm.
is birth, there is growth, there is reproduction, there's dwindle, decay, so on and so forth. When it's death and then decay, for example. So this is the transformation of the body. It goes through different phases, but all along this journey, soul is remaining as it is. Soul is not changing. Okay, there is a word that's actually used, immutable. Immutable means it doesn't go through these 6 transformations. Soul, whichever way it was prior to birth, during the whole life, it still remains as is without going through any transformation. Okay. Now, coming to your question, so soul, as it actually observes this body, like when hypothetically, let's assume these microbes, whichever that are here within our body, when you pull out, now the
Yes.
body becomes dysfunctional. Now, soul
Yes.
is intelligent enough to know this body is useless now, uninhabitable. It moves to another body. So it's
Okay.
not that microbes will go out and then the soul will think, oh, I'm without, this body is without microbes, I'll go. No, they all happen simultaneously. Soul is smart enough to know at what point it has to actually live. When I say smart, that
Mm.
smartness comes from law of karma. There is Paramatma. If you have to actually
Yes.
want to, fit in all those different concomitant factors, basically. But on a very, very high level, treating this whole process of birth and death as a black box, if you see, at what point does the soul move? Soul moves at the moment it realizes this body is no longer fit for its journey. Okay, so in the scenario which you are actually talking, when you pull the microbes out, body is no longer inhabitable. Even before you actually remove or during the process of removing, simultaneously soul will also think, this is useless for me, I'm moving out. It will move out.
Okay, sir. So this brings to my third question. When we talk about life and death, there are theories which, let's say, there are self-referential systems of Douglas Hofstadter, and so basically, what they're saying is that because of this uninhabitability of the body, what it translates to essentially is that the information processing patterns that lead to consciousness as an emergent property are not being able to be maintained because of the lack of these components that are required to fuel it. And therefore, that mechanism collapses, and that is basically death. Why do we need to have the soul as a thing that actually plays a role?
Yeah, I expected this question.
Yes.
Good question. Logically, when you actually think, we will come to that conclusion, but there is one wrong assumption that actually goes, not really wrong assumption. The viewpoint is different. And I'll tell you what I mean. If you want to study fire, right? What is the source of fire? You won't go study smoke. If there is an option to actually understand what is it that kindled the fire in the first place. Understand? According to scriptures, consciousness is not the source. Consciousness is just a consequence of presence of soul. It is a symptom of soul. It is the effect.
Yes.
Okay, in the coming back again to fire and smoke, consciousness is like the smoke. Without fire, there is no smoke. So what we can't, there is a certain way of actually understanding the fire by analyzing the smoke, but it can only give you so much information. It's not going to give you 100% information.
Right, sir.
Understand? So we can actually say, oh yes, consciousness is there. In fact, there are 2 symptoms or 2 parameters or litmus tests which you put anyone through to understand whether soul is present within their body or not. One is growth and the second is consciousness. As long as soul is present in this body, there will be growth and there will be consciousness. And using this basic rule of thumb, you can analyze plants. Do plants grow? Yes, they do grow. Do they have consciousness? Yes, they do have consciousness. Jagadish Chandra Bose, Indian botanist actually, he had proven and he received Nobel Prize for that, for proving plants do have life, injecting. You might have seen even videos, even people going and saying nice, sweet words and everything, and cursing. Even they say plants even respond to positive and negative words.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Okay, so
I've seen
they
that.
do have actually proven, even on a biological level, if you think, plants do have a certain level of consciousness, not as evolved and developed as humans do, but it does have consciousness. Like we talk about photophyte and hydrophyte, for example. It knows, even if you actually build a wall, it knows how to meander around it. It knows how to actually, find its water, for example. So plants do have consciousness. For the same matter, even if you take an ant, do ant have consciousness? They do. Do ant have growth? They do. Do animals, do they grow? Yes. Do they have consciousness? Yes. Whenever you come across these 2 conditions, these 2 boxes ticked, make no mistake, there are souls. Okay. If there is no soul, then neither of these two will be present. So all I'm saying is we can understand the presence of a soul by consciousness, but we can't say I will study the consciousness which is caused by a certain pattern, and it's that pattern that is the cause of life. That is not true. It's like studying the pattern of smoke doesn't necessarily tell us what the source of the smoke is.
Yes.
Understand? So the source of consciousness is soul. The effect of the soul is consciousness.
Okay.
You beat a dead man, there's no consciousness. It's because of that, they won't actually respond back. Basically, it's gone. Like even anesthetic, if you see, like, when they inject anesthetic within our body, how, people don't actually feel the consciousness of cutting, even during surgery, for example. Basically, it stops the information passing to the neuron that there is a pain. I was once injected with the local anesthesia. Okay, I had a small lump here at the back of my neck, and I could see I was still conscious, but they put local anesthetic there. They are cutting. I could see blood coming, but no feeling.
Yes.
Okay, and the reason is anesthetic does that effect. It cuts the information transfer. Normally, the neurons actually pass the information that, whenever there's fire, there's cold, you touch fire, it sends the signal immediately. Brain reacts immediately. Here, that information to go and process, that process is actually cut for us to be able to withstand the pain, basically. That's all. Okay, so, but consciousness as such comes to picture only because of soul. Now, they say consciousness is actually based on certain patterns and everything. There is one fundamental thing which I would like to explain, and this confusion is there for everyone. People usually say, if I ask you, how do you think? Right? We say usually, with my brains. I remember studying in biology, the amount of memory you have depends on how many convolutions there are in your brain. The more convolutions there are, bigger the memory. That's what they say. But even according to modern science, every cell in this body dies once every 7 years, which is pretty interesting. It's almost like, have you done in Windows operating system defragmentation?
Heard of it, sir.
It's almost like that. Every cell within the whole body, including the one in brain, it's actually dying and being born again once every 7 years. Maximum lifespan of any cell in the body is 7 years only, including memory cells. But funnily enough, or interestingly enough, even though it is dying once after 7 years, we don't go through amnesia every 7 years. We still remember where I remember, like hypothetically, let's say my name is Ghanashyam. That information that my name is Ghanashyam is stored somewhere. And every cell that's stored, if you take even modern or even a hard disk or anything, every capacitor that's actually storing that information, it's dead and it's coming back again. But still, interestingly, defragmentation happens. Just like it moves a certain memory around in the hard disk, same thing is happening even with us. So we are not losing any information, even though every cell that is actually part of the memory storage, it's actually constantly dying and taking birth again. Understand? So the point I wanted to say is, now, do brain have an effect in our consciousness? Absolutely. But mind also has. So this is how scriptures reconcile what we call as the gray matter, or what we call as our brains, to what scriptures call as mind. Okay, so soul, if you take, soul is the root of consciousness, ROOT. Okay, brain is the root of consciousness, ROUTE, or route. Okay. The reason why I'm saying with the wordplay there is, it's easy to remember that way. One is the source, and the other one is the media with which the consciousness is actually being transferred. Okay, the soul is actually present within the heart, and the soul is given as the, like people usually say, pacemaker or sinoauricular node. That's the one that gives the pacemaker. Yesterday, I was actually going through one research paper. They are trying to develop, pacemaker usually they install within the heart. Now they're trying to put outside. So you can just wear it like a pen. You don't need to go to surgery anymore. And that's enough to actually keep you alive, for example. So even the pacemaker within the heart, where is that getting the energy from? According to scriptures, it's the soul, presence of the soul that gives the potency to the pacemaker to keep on pumping, to keep on acting that way. And then it actually happens here, even though soul as such is not visible. Okay, so consciousness wise, soul is the root of consciousness, meaning the origin of consciousness. But that consciousness is transferred to this is like a one dimension. From a spiritual dimension, it gets transferred to physical dimension through the brain. So brain does have its role. Sometimes you will come across spiritualists saying, oh, brain has got nothing to do. That's not agreed by scriptures. Scriptures do say brain is involved, definitely. And there are stories also, if you like, for argument. For example, there is one instance where, have you come across Shiva's wife? Her name was Sati, Parvati, and she dies. Do you know that Puranic story? Basically, what happens is Lord Shiva, he marries the daughter of a king. His name is Prajapati, Daksha. Okay, so he marries. Daksha wasn't very keen to give his daughter in marriage to Shiva. But because she fell in love, he reluctantly agrees. And then Shiva marries her. Her name is Dakshayini or Sati. Okay, the word Sati, because Sati means the most chaste lady. She was the most chaste lady. Okay. So they both are married, leading a very happy married life. And at one point, what happens was Daksha performs a huge sacrifice, like a huge festival, inviting all the demigods. But because he has this grudge against Lord Shiva, he says, no, don't invite him. Now, Shiva, he's Ashutosh, he's like a very easygoing guy. He says like, it's okay. But Sati takes it very personal, I'm the dearest daughter of my father, and she's the pet for her father, actually. But because he hated Shiva, he started to kind of like being indifferent to Sati as well. So Sati then tells to Shiva, I'm going to go to my father, just ask him why he hasn't actually invited you. I also don't want to miss out on the fun of the family get together. Shiva tells her, don't go, you'll be insulted. Still, she was adamant, no, I want to go. Shiva lets her go. She goes. Daksha continues his verbal tirade against Shiva. Sati gets angry. Using her yogic power, she immolates herself. She increases the fire of her body using yogic power, and the fire burns her body. Now, when Shiva comes to know about it, Shiva gets angry. He plucks a hair, throws it on the ground, and from that hair grows one huge, gigantic personality known as Virabhadra. If you have come across this term or name, that is Virabhadra, origin of him. Virabhadra comes, completely ransacks the whole sacrificial arena, and then he spares nobody, including Daksha. Daksha, he finally gets him, puts him on like a guillotine, takes a big chopper and chops off his head completely. Now Daksha loses his head. Now then the whole pandemonium somehow is like, there is sanity prevails, everything is like, stopped, and finally Shiva comes to that place. And at that time, Shiva, taking pity on Daksha, who anyway was his father-in-law, he asks one of his Bhutagana to install a goat's head. So then they chop off the head of a goat, which was kept for sacrifice, and they put the first head transplant ever recorded in human history, the head on Daksha. Now, the point to understand here is, even though Daksha had lost his brain initially when he lost his head, now he has got goat brain only. Nevertheless, Daksha still remembers what happened prior to him getting chopped, and Daksha offers prayers of glorification to Lord Shiva, even begging for forgiveness, which for the mistakes he had done. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he explains in that Leela that here is a proof that unlike modern science, which actually says that the source of memory is brain, it's not the brain. It is this subtle body, which is intelligence that is storing. And the proof of that here is, even though Daksha had received a new set of brains, he is still able to remember whatever that had happened prior to having a new set of brain, new head, basically. Okay, so soul, it's like soul is the original master copy, or intelligence is the master copy. Brain is like a USB stick. You can change the USB. In future, I vaguely remember either they are doing research or they have done the very first brain transplant also. I'm not sure. But there will come a day, which is even supported by scriptures also, that you'll be able to change the brain completely. That's why there is already a case study here. And that is the proof that the memory that we think is actually stored in the brain, it's not actually stored in the brain. It is actually stored as part of our subtle body. Subtle body meaning mind intelligence, but to be precise, it is the intelligence that actually is the faculty for the memory storage. So when we die, according to the Shastras, we have five senses, a sense of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and everything. These are gross senses. But then subtle sense, there are three which is mentioned: mana, buddhi, ahankara, three. So when I die, if I go to another body, at that time I quit only the gross senses, but my mind, intelligence, and false ego goes with me to the other body along with the soul. That's why even, let's say, even twins, they look the same, they are born almost at the same time, born to the same parents, brought up in the same circumstance, but they'll be completely two different individuals. One may be very gentle, polite, and the other one may be like, and the reason is that nature they bring from their previous life, previous birth, because that is not to do with their brain. That is to do with their intelligence, and that is to do with their, whatever karma they did, whatever memory they actually carry, whatever propensity, proclivity they carry from their previous life, they use that to lead their current life like that. Okay, so soul is the origin of consciousness. Brain is the ROUT, root and route of consciousness, basically. Okay, so brain does have a role, even according to Shastra, but brain is not the source of consciousness. Okay. Because, and the proof for that is, again, if I'm dead, my brain is still there. They still apparently have Einstein's brain, but it means nothing. You can't read any information, nothing. Because the empowerment has to come from soul. Otherwise, it's like lock the laptop, basically. Without password, you can't really decipher whatever information that's there, like that.
Okay. Actually, I'll try to make this question as a follow-up, because I'm trying to understand layer by layer.
Sure.
Before I hit the target, either try to unify the entire question, but I'll try to make it as short as possible.
No problem.
There are three aspects to my question. First is the use of metaphor in explaining something. So I was recently reading this topic of conceptual blending, and therein I read about Chinese mythology, and one of the examples they gave was that human nature is like uncarved wood. You have to carve it to make something valuable out of it. This is said by Gauzy, one of the philosophers, and then he proposes that in doing so, then what you do essentially is you mutilate that wood to make it into a shape that is suitable to what you believe is valuable. So when we talk about metaphors, we use different aspects of metaphors to project different outputs, which is the blend of the metaphor. And this is a double scope blend, basically. There are two interpretations and multiple can come out of the same source domains. So when we are talking about explaining soul as fire that causes the smoke of consciousness, in certain ways, when we are referring to this metaphor, the credibility of the explanation lies in the metaphor itself, but not probably realized more substantiatively as to why that might be the case, that this particular structure resembles the reality. So that's one thing. Second, this also then follows to the other metaphors of root and route. It is something we are taking for as if, yes, this is the case. Why so is something I really want to get into a little like soon. And I do agree when this is Shastra about the Shastras, that when you also talked about defragmentation, that is also related to how scientists are saying that, we can adjust transistors according to your neural networks and then recreate your entire consciousness into a robot, basically. So it is, the medium doesn't matter, you can transfer things. But the key difference, I believe, again, would be that they are still using one-on-one transistor and congruency to create the entire brain, wherein they say that we'll download your personality from the brain itself, upload it into this kind of a device. It can be a robot, it can be a hologram. It just is the information patterns that matter that can create you entirely. So even if we compare with the science of the day, they are not they may be doing something similar like the replacement with the goat brain, and then but they would argue that if that is the case, then the ability to think should be restricted to the ability of a goat to think, even if you are able to resurrect somebody. The memory and everything they would not support that it is coming from a different route, or a different kind of medium is being transferred. So that kind of is like a bifurcation over there, I feel, how what scientists would be saying in terms of the defragmentation. Um, and uh, and coming back to why the question of the soul again, why do we think that there is a root like a soul? It is also relating to my third question, but I will unify the questions and present it so for the sake of clarity. When we say that, when we talk about God, right now I'm using it synonymously to soul, but I will have you differentiate for me, please. But when we talk about these anthropomorphic kind of entities that are causing things, I think it is because of our helplessness to address an infinite regress argument, which is, let's say that if I push my friend, I may argue that it is the intermolecular forces of repulsion that cause that push to happen. But in that case, why did that intermolecular force exist in the first place? Somebody would say there are field lines that interact and that causes the push. But why do field lines exist? And that infinite regress of why leads to a point of an uncaused cause, wherein we don't know what is the point of this cause. And in assuming that our argument itself is valid, we are assuming a forward notion of time, that something causes the other entropy, like these things happen, there is a cause and effect chain, assumes a forward arrow of time. So and again, when we talk about God, this assumption that the uncaused cause is an entity that is God and has a sense of intention and has the potential of action independent of time is an unfalsifiable claim, because how would I prove that wrong or right? I can assume it to be true. And there are two other things. When it comes to the beginning of the universe, now I might seem that I'm digressing to a different point, but I feel that they are connected. When we talk about the beginning of the universe, we talk about that the beginning included the formation of space and time. Space time, it is formed then. So therefore, my question is that if it was an act of God to initiate that, the act itself requires time as a medium for somebody to act. And if that is caused after the creation itself, how did the action get conducted before for the creation, for the Big Bang to be initiated? Um, Given that there is no time, and given that intention itself is again a metaphorical construct of humans, because we believe we have seen things that I intended something, and therefore I did. And intention, we believe, comes out of free will, which is again then preceding everything that follows that intention. Whereas there are some brain studies which do mention that you can actually predict an intention before the person is even consciously aware of that intention, um, through some brain processes that hint that this intention is going to be produced through these information patterns. So, given this gray area of the formation of intention, given this gray area of the arrow of time that is required for, and also because evolutionarily all organisms perceive their reality differently. I can see a different spectrum of light and sound. An owl sees it differently, but it is all geared for our survival. So in the spectrum of light we perceive nearly 0%, in the spectrum of everything we perceive nearly 0%, and we are making tools to now even perceive gravitational waves through them. So when our perception is limited, it is geared for our survival and every organism's survival. Yet, all organisms are geared to perceive space time as a common construct. But our explanation of God, our explanation of the acts of God, take into account space and time, which is essentially a common construct for everybody's survival, which may not exist.
You are saying, right, there's an intention. Every act that we actually do, there is a time and space that's actually involved. So if we go with that entity, the entity also need to work based on that time and intention or time and space. That part is not supported by the scriptures. It's like, for example, um, the extrapolation or induction method will work only to a certain extent, right? I can try to make a guesswork. Okay, it takes me X amount of effort. I should make myself ready to lift, let's say, 50 kg. And then someone else who's a weightlifting champion, he lifts, 350, 400 kg, how much ever. With that, I can extrapolate because there are a lot of, going to your first point, points of similarity. Now, on that point, even scriptures talk about whenever you use an analogy, there should be enough points of similarity for you to say that. Like, I'll give you an example. The same point about soul and the effect of soul, I can't use a ball pen. There's a refill, there's an ink. I can't say, the ink is the source of this writing, so ink is like the soul. The analogy will get out of the window because the question will naturally come, what will happen when the ink runs out? Does that mean, soul will actually live through? You understand? And even when we study scriptures, we are conscious of the analogy. Okay, there is a book called Chaitanya Charitamrita that gives a detailed description about if you compare two things, what are the aspects that need to match between them in order to use that as a possible tool to explain the unknown in terms of the known.
Which book
Okay.
is this, sir? Which book is this?
Chaitanya Charitamrita. That book actually talks about points of similarity. Okay, it talks about Siddhanta in terms of what Shankaracharya said versus what Ramanujacharya said, for example, Advaita and Dvaita philosophy. But this particular point is actually described there in detail. Okay. Now, coming to the second one, when someone who is in my species, for example, and even that is actually very hard for me to fully understand how is that person capable of doing something, really, really marvelous. It just goes beyond me. Like, you come across like what goes, I'll give you example, musicians, how do they just compose a music? It always fascinates me, like, how even a poet, until the point they write, they don't know what they're going to write, but where is that coming from? It always puzzles me, like, whenever you come across this. Or even like, if you now take that understanding slightly further, or that intrigueness, curiosity a little further, you look at nature, you look at birds actually like, making sounds. You look at even like, I've watched one small video. One fish is actually making a beautiful pattern on the floor of the ocean whenever it's actually ready to mate, whenever it wants to attract its female fish. Who gave him that intelligence? You understand it, right? It's when it goes beyond humans, even there are things which other humans do, which is beyond us to completely understand how they are doing. But when you go beyond human species to other species, which we can see, even that is also puzzling. Now, here we are talking about someone who is the origin of everything. God means, definition of the scriptures is Janmadi Yasya Yataha. That means God is one from whom everything emanated. When I say everything, including time and space.
Yes.
Scriptures, they talk about absolute sense only all the time, which means if scriptures say Sundar Bhagavan Krishna, for example, beautiful God Krishna, that word Sundar is used not like a Miss World Mystery Universe.
Yes.
Okay, 2024 is like an Aishwarya Rai, 2023 is like someone else. It's not like that. It is said in absolute. Every scriptural statement is said in an absolute sense, which means there's no terms and conditions apply for those statements. Okay, so coming to that understanding, I'm saying, if we go with the definition of God, God means Janmadi Yasya Yataha. This is Bhagavata Purana's very first line. Bhagavata Purana has got 18,000 verses. Very first line of this, it says Janmadi Yasya Yataha, and that gives the definition of God. Okay, now reason why I'm saying absolute means God is He from whom everything emanated, and that includes time and space as well. So to think that He also should have been thinking based on this time and space, that's not correct according to scriptures. Okay, so we can't put our own parameters on them. Like an eagle, how is it like flying like kilometers above and it's still able to see the prey underwater, and it just goes, plunges its beak, like comes out to the fish. And a fisherman sitting right like few meters away, he can't see nothing.
Yes.
Understand? So I'm just saying, each one of those creatures, if we actually just look outside, it blows our mind. How are they able to do that? Now, if we talk about the origin of everything, it's practically impossible for us to predict this is how somebody will do. And for that matter, even like going with the same kind of argument, man's quest to go to other planets and make a settlement there. Like we see one of the biggest push is actually coming from Elon Musk, basically. Like and if you look at his model, how he actually envisages they'll actually go, it will all work. But it's like almost having like can humans live underwater? Possible. Submarines they live. But is that the most comfortable, effortless way of living? There's something where you do for the sake of it, but there is something where you do naturally, in a way, you going through human pleasure. Now, if you think I will actually encase everyone in that small capsule and I'll make them move around or do like this, yeah, you can do. I will call that just a jail, basically. The point I'm saying was that the to put the same parameters, to put the same limitations which we go through to someone who by definition is beyond everything, who is the origin of everything, wouldn't help here to understand his position. Now, for example, people normally say show me God for me to believe. Like even if I put forth that question, why don't you believe God? First question you will ask is show me. Show me, show me some proof. The point is, seeing is one thing, but seeing with knowledge is another. All of us have this experience of looking at the cross section of a leaf or something under the microscope, right? Now, before you look there, you need to equip yourself with enough knowledge about it first. Then when you see, what you see will make sense. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it will just look some stain of the leaf you are seeing. It will look different colors, some patterns you will see. That's all you will see. But it won't mean nothing to you. Okay, so seeing as such, but without the background of that is not going to help at all. So seeing, people usually say seeing is believing. I'm challenging that. Seeing is not believing if it is done without knowledge. Okay, so my point is, this argument, why is it God? Why can't it be? There is only one answer to this. As you say, we can just keep on going on infinite loop. Regressively, we can keep on actually putting forth why this, and everything. The fundamental point which scriptures give, without taking which one can never find answer to this question is, proof of the pudding is in eating. There is a way how we acquire knowledge. Ram Bhadracharya, one famous saint, for the Ayodhya, he actually went. He has learned most of Ramcharitamanas without seeing. So his way of learning is just hearing only.
Yes.
And for many, hearing, it means nothing. They will learn only by reading. And for some people who, we call jnanis, they can just contemplate. Okay, they are like deep thinkers, for example. They'll be able to find even by observing nature around and everything. I'm saying there are different patterns how we acquire knowledge, but the point again coming is, proof of the pudding is in the eating means, but to understand God, one has to go through experience. There is a certain way of learning about the experience of God.
Okay.
And it's not based on just discussing based on our own understanding. It's not just based on analyzing something in our laboratories. It's something even beyond that.
Okay.
And how can we understand? Yesterday I read an interesting article about microgravity. Okay, ISRO is actually trying to invest to understand about the effects of microgravity. When people actually go up, how is it actually gonna affect them? One thing they are actually saying is the release of calcium will be more, and because of that, they'll have kidney stones. They'll be prone to kidney stone formation. There are many things they're actually saying, including your digestion, eyes, how it's actually going to impact, so on and so forth. So even to explain something like that, when you go away, when the gravity is actually practically next to nothing there, even to understand that 9 out of 10 people will actually fail. We cannot fully understand. You watch this movie Interstellar.
Yes.
How many times do we need to watch to really understand what is the plot? You can't get it the first time.
Yeah.
Make it movie.
Yeah.
How many times? And God alone show me in like, why is that? Donald Trump, you can't go and see, you have to go through so many different centuries before he thinks you are worthy to give an audience. And here we are talking about someone who is like the origin of everything. So to see or to even experience, there is a certain methodology which one has to actually follow. Just like how university studying is different, research studying is different, primary school, high school, higher secondary school is different. Similarly, spiritual education, there is a certain tool, there is a certain way of learning, and there is a certain experiential way of learning. And the reason why I'm bringing experience again is you can't, even in material science, you can't experience everything just by seeing. Okay, like for example, people take movies. Many movies which I have seen, people have written as box office bomb, flopped, and everything, but I love the movie. My experience is different compared to whoever who actually watched that and wrote very scathing attack on how they took the movie. You understand it, right?
Yes.
There are some things which are subjective.
Yes.
Even I'm talking just material experience, I'm saying, what is to my liking may not be to yours. And here we are talking about a personality, talking about an existence which is beyond the dimension which we normally interact with, which means we should be in a position to first understand how to actually first go to that frequency. And then in that frequency, how to make sense of whatever information we get or whatever experience we go through. Unless someone is open to that, it's very difficult. Very difficult means I'm not saying science doesn't allow challenging. Krishna allows challenging. Arjuna challenges. Many times he challenges. Sarcastically also he challenges. But until the point he accepts Krishna as his guru, but after he accepts Krishna as his guru, he still questions him, but in a little polite way. But if you read the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, one of Krishna's name is Janardhan. Janardhan means one who is the protector of everyone, one who maintains everyone. Arjuna sarcastically tells to Krishna, hey, people call you Janardhan, and here you are asking me to kill them. Is this how you take care of them? Is this why they called you Janardhan? Can you understand?
Yeah.
Insult means he shoots him, basically like that. Krishna smilingly, just politely let him went out, and then Krishna starts to speak. After he takes a bit more humble position, saying like, okay, look, no more friendly talks. It's not going to work. You are my guru and I am your disciple. Okay, now tell me. I'll still keep asking questions. And then he frames the question in a bit more polite way. Okay, so questioning, challenging, even Prabhupada allowed it and Prabhupada welcomed it. And Prabhupada says only those who are serious about God, they will ask questions. And questioning or challenging it is not offensive. That's not a problem. Curiosity, everyone, all of us have gone through that phase basically. But as much as that freedom is given to question, to the same extent, there has to be some receptivity as well. Correct? So we can challenge the Shastra left, right, and center. But fine, we are challenging. There is some answer which the scriptures are giving. And the scriptures are giving, you will experience this, you will understand this if you do X, Y, Z. Step 1, step 2, step 3. That you reject saying, oh no, I'm not going to do, but I still want it in the way I want. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work even in material. If somebody wants to get MBBS degree, they have to go to college. They can't say, I'll study a book on Grey's Anatomy and I'm a doctor now. They'll put you in jail.
Yes, sir.
Correct. There is a certain way we agree. Material education, we agree. Going to politics to even represent a Senate, there is a process which people have to follow. Everything, there is a process. But then understanding God, show me God. Show me now. That means you're bluffing. It doesn't work like that. Okay, if you have the patience to study MBBS for 5 years, if you have the patience to build your political career for 15 years before you stand for next US presidency, then be reasonable in the expectation and allow the process and allow the knowledge to come and work on you. So normally when we study or when we tell to people, I meet a lot of students, I always tell them, it's almost like an axiom only. You assume a statement and then based on that you travel and then you see where it takes you. So I tell them before you read Bhagavad Gita, you can challenge Krishna's statements, no problem. But here Krishna is specifically telling to Arjuna, this knowledge can be understandable only if somebody is a devotee and a friend. Now that's the precondition. If you don't tick these two boxes, you can waste your time. And that's what scholars have been doing for like ages now. But I tell them, at least during the time when you are studying Bhagavad Gita, you be a devotee just
Yes.
at that time.
Yes.
Krishna is saying, he's following you, you do this, and you assume Krishna is saying he's your friend, accept, and then you see where it takes, where it goes. If based on that axiomatic statement, if everything else is actually that follows that is true, then your original,
Axiom was right.
first line of the presumption also has to be true. Basically, that's all. Otherwise, there's only so much we can reason out, so much we can actually draw parallels between how modern science actually perceives this versus how scriptures perceive this.
Yes.
But at some point, we have to understand modern science, you go through a certain tool.
Yes.
Agree? Yes. What is the tool here? So that's one question that we need to answer. We need to be honest about it. Okay. And there is a certain amount of time it actually takes to, like I was reading the space mission goals for different countries. Space mission always intrigues me. Vedic cosmology, I love. So anything with the space, Interstellar, I might have watched like 20 times.
Yes.
My favorite movie. I love that one. It's like you can't pick a flaw, emotionally, music-wise, it's just unbelievable.
Yes.
So I can tell you the dialogue actually, like shlokas. So what I'm saying is that I was studying the space mission goals, and they are saying each one, like, India wants to send 3 people to space by like 2026. Japan is saying we will actually land something in moon by 2028, and we will send like a rover that will go collect samples. It will pack, it will keep them, and then 5 years later they'll send another mission that will go pick it up and come.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, like, man, come on, just to pick some sand is billions of dollars, time, patience, everything is there. So to understand God, I tell them, please give God a fair go, little bit at least. Then it'll make some sense. It's not something we can think, because by definition, one of God's name is Adoksaja. Okay. Adoksaja means one who cannot be perceived by material sense. That's his definition. Now we can spend the time trying to disprove it and then again be proven wrong, or we just accept it. Okay. He comes with the certain conditions and he's saying, only if you go through this, I will reveal myself to you, or I will do this. Follow. And then experience it, and then you see. Because experience is a big part of spirituality. Definitely. I'll stop there. Yes.
So I just have a follow-up question building upon what you said. So
Yep.
it starts off little digging deeper into the sense we were exploring metaphors in talking. So you said that we cannot assign our own parameters to that which is the ultimate, if I'm right. So therefore, like I don't represent science in any way, but I'm just saying that logically speaking, I think what the farthest we can go, and scientists I think should agree, is not to actually say what something is, but to falsify what it is not.
Correct.
So they are not going to tell you that this is the narrative truth. This is what it may not be. So when we talk about assigning our own parameters, if we do not do so, like therefore, if we cannot assign our parameters, I could then conclude that we are trying to explain something metaphorically, because metaphor means we are assigning our character. We are saying he acts, he did something. So it is, whenever somebody listens to something like that, will conjure up the way we have seen things to manifesting, which is over.
Correct.
So in that sense, before I get to the other points, I would just like to confirm whether we are on the same page, that when we talk about
Absolutely.
describing God, it is metaphoric. Is it right?
Yeah.
So it is not the narrative truth that somebody did something, because the underpinnings, the prerequisite of a personality is not met, because we are not able to assign personal characteristics.
We can't assign personal characteristics in the way that we have experienced, in the way that we are perceiving around. There are personal characteristics.
So in that way in which the personality exists, how are
Yeah.
it is the personality word is metaphorical.
Personality word as such is not metaphorical. Like I'll give you example. In our experience, humans means they go through 4 stages in life: birth, death, old age, and disease. Okay, you take any personality. You take a cow, cows go through old age. Cow takes birth, cow dies. Cows go through old age also. It goes into disease condition also. Okay, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. These are 4 common things for all living entities. Okay, modern science, I recently studied in a Wikipedia, I think, or somewhere I read, they have found about, and using nomenclature, they have actually named also about 2 million species max, spread across like humans, animals, birds, reptiles, worms, everything. Now, according to Padma Puran, there are 8.4 million species. But unlike modern science that classifies based on morphology, mollusca, so on and so forth, vertebrae, invertebrate, which is based on form and structure, the Puranic way of describing or categorizing the species is based on consciousness. So they are saying 8.4 million types of consciousness spread across all these different species. Okay, so 8.4 million. Humans alone, they say 400,000 are there. If you're wondering how many different ways people can actually be, 400,000, that's the max. And that includes demigods, ghosts, paranormal creatures, like whatever, everything. Okay, now coming to this point. So personality generally means we think, okay, these 4, birth, death, old age, and disease. These 4 is common for across all these, modern science version of 2 million species or 8.4 million species this side, doesn't matter. Now, if we understand this personality means, then we project it on Krishna, who is God, and we say, if he is a personality, he also needs to be taking birth, he also needs to die, he also needs to grow old, he also needs to get diseased. He's not going to take them. So our understanding or our definition of personality is different to his personality. Even by definition, I'm saying he's someone who is eternally youthful. He's someone who never gets diseased. He never dies. In fact, he doesn't even born. One common question we get is, okay, this deGrasse, one famous scientist, theoretical physicist, actually. He recently, I was watching one of his podcast, and they're asking, do you have any objection about accepting God? He said, I have no objection. But the only question I ask is, people tell me, God is the origin of everything. I have no problem with that. But when I ask them who is the origin of God, they are flabbergasted. That's the thing I can't. And I was thinking, dude, by definition, I come back to first line of Puranic statement again. Janmadiyasya yataha. Because it's a oxymoronic statement he's actually making. Because if he says, who is the origin of God? And if I answer that question as a person X is origin of God, then that person has to be God. God cannot be God. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Who you accept as God cannot be God if he has an origin. Because that person who has the origin will actually be God, not the guy who we are talking here.
Yes.
So that statement itself is wrong. But he doesn't realize. I was thinking, he has such a brilliant way of explaining complex things in a simple terms. But I was thinking, even for him, the simple logic evades.
Yes.
Something which I can explain to a school kid, he's like one guy who I admire. Whenever anything comes, I always research, how is he explained? He explains very, very simple. Like I was looking at his explanation of 3-dimension and 4-dimension, like brilliant. He was actually telling 3-dimension means if you want to find something, let us say in an apartment, you are meeting somebody. And he was telling very, very simply, if you want to locate something, we always need when and where, basically. That when is for example, if I say I'm meeting Vedant, 2 questions will come. One is, where are you meeting him and when are you meeting him?
Yes.
So if I say where, then you will ask which street, which lane, which floor. He says that's the 3-dimension. 4th dimension is the question comes when. So he says this is how you locate anything in this world with the 4 dimensions. he was actually saying, I was like thinking, wow, nobody has explained to me like that. This guy can actually simplify things. But such a genius, when it comes to understanding a basic fundamental thing, he is screwing up. I have no problem accepting. But when I ask, everyone is created by God, but who created God? I was like, dude, if somebody had created God, then that
He would
someone
have
is God, not
Hmm.
this person who's claiming himself as God. Okay,
Hmm.
so point I'm coming here is the way how we understand a personality to how scriptures call God as a personality, there are parallels. Even biblical statement that says man is an image of God. There
Projection.
are similarities
Yeah.
where like we do have certain features like of God. That's true. But just because I have a limitation doesn't mean God also has got all the limitations. It doesn't have to be like that necessarily. Okay, so it's almost like entropy. Basically, the amount of anomalies that you have.
Yeah.
Generally, if you take a man and a woman, they may be old, 60 years old also. They may unite and they may form something which is less faulty than them. How can two things which fault can actually create something even lesser faulty than that? You understand? Even law of entropy will be challenged there also to a certain extent. So my point is, there is definitely tools that we can actually use. Like as I said, God has given our thinking capacity, God has given our senses. We can experience, we can use our imaginative, inductive thought process to actually understand. So what we have is useful. I'm not saying completely reject what we have. Prabhupada himself says we can't completely reject science because it's another way of understanding reality. And it's just that it's not the smartest way, basically. That's all. But if we say just because I can't understand with whatever limited tools that I have actually have, because of that, I'm not going to accept truth. I have a problem with that because Pluto used to be a planet in my school days. It's no longer the case now.
Yeah.
People keep changing, but now on one point which you said, now how can I even accept this? When I said this is root of consciousness, this is the route of consciousness, that's okay. But that's based on the premise that this is truth. The answer to that is, like you very beautifully mentioned, that they can't state the truth as it is, but they can state what is false. Now, this challenge from Vedic statements is Vedas has got, I think, close to 4 million verses. Let modern scientists prove one statement wrong. This is one open challenge of the Vedas. One statement wrong, let it prove. On the other hand, many of the modern theories that were accepted as truth over a period of time have been disproved even by another new scientist, basically. Let modern science challenge and disprove even one statement of Vedas wrong. That's the challenge of the Vedas. And that's the proof, because anything which is human made, everything's flawed. One flaw or the other will be there. Okay, like we wanted to solve a transportation problem. So we invented vehicles, we drill the oil, drill baby drill, we did that. But then now it's causing pollution problem. You understand? Anything we actually take, which is man-made, it solves a problem, but it introduces another problem. There is always a flaw in anything that is actually created by man. In human existence, human experience, we haven't come across even one thing which is 100% perfect. Vedas use that to actually say, this is the proof, this is apaurusheya. Apaurusheya means, Purusha means humans, apaurusheya means it's beyond humans. It's not something which is done by a human. So just to conclude that, God is a person, he has a personality, but not with the limitations of the personality that we are and we experience.
So from what we talked about right now, and there's again this entrenchment of metaphor or reality that I'm trying to still understand. When so much difference is there between what we perceive as a personality and what the ultimate personality is, why are we able to still reconcile with the fact that it is a person? Therefore, why can't it just be something that we don't know?
Good question. The answer which scriptures give for that is, if I have something and I create something, okay, let's assume God has created us, go with that statement, and we have a personality. At least you can understand till this much, that which means creating a personality is within the powers of God. Why is it the people who are created from God, by God alone, can have personalities, and we completely deny the possibility that God cannot be a person? Don't you think it's a little unfair? It's like I'm a billionaire. Okay. Let's say, for example, I'm a billionaire. I'm giving 1 million to one guy. Wouldn't it be a little unfair to say, see, 1 million is given to them, that person is a millionaire, but this billionaire is not a millionaire? Don't you think it's a little unreasonable to conclude that way? Because by having billion, I'm automatically a millionaire. If I am God, I have created someone who has a personality, which means it's within my capacity to have personality for myself as well. Why should we even deny? Why should we even think about it? Because if Elon Musk gives $1 million every day for people who sign supporting the Constitution, at that time, nobody challenged that Elon Musk is not a millionaire anymore. People would say, are you stupid? He has $200 billion. True. God, but we are challenging God. When it comes to God is creating all of us, each one of us have personality. A cow has personality. A tiny dog has got an attitude. We have a certain thinking power. We are all individuals. We are able to accept all of that. Why are we so unfair when it comes to dealing with God alone and say God doesn't have personality? Why we didn't? That's my question. We didn't challenge Elon Musk that he's not a millionaire. But how can somebody give a million if he's not a millionaire? How can somebody give personality to others if he himself doesn't have personality? That's
Because,
unreasonable.
yes, because I think when we talk about this kind of comparison, when there is a billionaire giving some million, so it is within the purview of how things in our environment work.
Correct.
So we are able to deduce that if this is the way, this should happen. But if when we say that the personality that we are referring to, first assuming that it exists, is so different from how we know things in our own parameters, then the comparison is different, because we are comparing a billionaire and a millionaire within the same parameters, whereas
Correct.
comparing the personality to this ultimate within different parameters, which form the basis of personality itself. So when something is beyond those parameters, it is difficult to compare it with a metaphor or an analogy of something within those parameters.
Correct. I come completely with you till this point. But let me tell you where the prejudice comes subtly.
Okay.
If we say I'm a personality, the one who created me, at least we should be open enough to say he may be a personality, at least. He may or may not, but at least there is a personality that's possible. But
Hmm.
our question always comes, why should he be a person? You understand? Why
Okay.
can't it be? And I tell you, scriptures themselves, they challenge this point and they say the reason why people can't accept God is a person is because as a personality, they have gone through a lot of bad experience. Everyone, you ask anybody in life, you go and ask them, they may say, like, just for namesake, if you ask them, if I rewind your life back and if I ask you to lead life, what would you do? If somebody asks me, what would you do? I would say I will invest in Bitcoins. Just 9 years ago, or sorry, 15 years ago, I was a developer at that time. Even now I'm a developer. so yeah, I would go purchase. You fast forward even further, I would say I wouldn't have even come to Australia. I'm lying. I would have come. I love Radha Gopinath here. But I'm just saying, reason why people think having a personality or they hate having that personality is they have bad experience with their own personality and they have bad experience dealing with other personalities as well. This is the reason which scriptures give. So when they think about God, people have deduced personality means pain. So God means he shouldn't be going through pain. And they deduce the reason for pain is having this personality. So God means he shouldn't be having personality. Again, this goes with the premise that whatever my capacity is same as God's capacity. But there is a possibility here that God is a personality, but he is one guy who is Mr. Perfect, who never makes any mistakes. There is one name for him called Achyuta. Achyuta means one who never makes any mistake. So this whole conception is like, beyond us. How can somebody be so beautiful, so fair, so powerful, so this doesn't make mistake? How is this ever possible? Because it is beyond us. people try to still put God in a certain small box. And they say, why should he be a personality? But if you look at it objectively, you think this way: I am a one gold particle that has come out of a gold mine, using analogy here. And I can be shaped in a certain way. Why can't that possibility be there? At least a possibility. I need to be open at least. Why can't that possibility be there for that huge gold mine, one big blob of gold that comes, and that can also have a personality? If this is possible for me, yeah, that's possible. That is being open. But saying I have a personality, what is the proof that it has a person? That because we didn't question our parents. I have a personality. I came from my parents. I didn't question whether my parents have got like a personality or not. Their parents didn't question. But if we keep on going back to back to back to back, finally it comes to God. Why should we question God alone? We have been very unfair actually on God. That's my point here.
So when I think one of the reasons why, apart from the fact that there exists a certain allusion to limitation of human limitation that we don't want to ascribe to the ultimate entity, which you said as pain, is one of the reasons why we don't want, we feel that we should not call the ultimate being as a being or a person. Could it also be that, again, because whenever we are using metaphors to try to explain this predicament itself, we are assuming a certain set of parameters which are constant.
Yep.
But when we are applying it to something which are completely different in terms of parameters.
Yep.
So I want to know that then in that sense, the problem could also be that how do we define person initially, because initial definition can only be based on the person we have ever seen, that is the person that I am or somebody else.
Yep.
And maybe the common aspect is intelligence. That intelligence, the ultimate intelligence, omnipotent, time independent, and everything.
Yep.
However, when we say that this could also be the case, nobody denies that, because this kind of a claim is unfalsifiable.
Correct.
It is something that can be assumed, and therefore you can make a whole a set of metaphors that allude to that in a very convincing way, in order to and then people may start following it in looking forward to the level of perception, so that that particular thing that they have already assumed can be true comes to their experience. So it becomes a pursuit that people get into. So this alludes to the example that you gave of looking into the microscope and seeing something which doesn't make sense at a first, but you need a certain knowledge to be able to make sense of it. But I would argue that that sense that you're making of it is not that itself, but how it is useful to you, what the phenomenal truth of that particular thing that you are seeing, how you can manipulate it, how you can use it for something. So it is biased by that knowledge. It is not empowered by that knowledge. It is, you are seeing what you want to see so that you can use it in a certain way and it can have a certain impact. Similarly, when we talk about tasting the pudding in order to, what was it? You have to consume the
Proof
pudding.
of the pudding is in the tasting.
Proof of the pudding is in the tasting. If we ascribe this metaphor to the process of assuming that kind of a person, I think there are certain things that get missed in trying to do that, because again, all our metaphors are within the parameters of what exists for us. But when we are applying it to two different entities. One is me, and one is something that is beyond my parameters. Therefore, it may feel unfair to not consider that possibility, which is absolutely true. But then it could also be a little um, going overboard if we take actions based on that assumption.
Yeah,
And
I'm with you. What is the best way to experience space? Watching movies?
hmm,
Is
my
that how you experience space?
no space, like in terms of yeah, it gives me a better insight as to what it can be more vividly than what I can
Yeah.
see from the
What
sky,
is the best way?
to go to space.
Basically, that's all. It's as simple as that. If you want to understand God, then you have to, there is no easy way. There is no shortcut. There is no, I can't say I will just keep on digging down the ground and I'll say I still want to experience space. It doesn't work like that. With everything, if you see, there is, even within our experience, if I have to go watch a baseball match, okay, I have to fight through the traffic. Okay, I have to stand in queue. Or you want to watch, even when I keep forgetting, very Swifty, Taylor Swift. Okay, thousands of people, like, they book online, they put them in a queue, still they don't get, they go stand for like 2 days in the queue to actually get a ticket. So if you want anything in this world which gives you bliss, which gives you some happiness, even for a short time, many times it turns out to be painful also. People go to Taylor Swift and then it rains. And
Yes.
just to keep them happy, she also sings in rain. What to do? No, you come across, you
Yes.
go pay so much, watch a baseball match or a cricket match, and the team which you actually support, fails. How many youth called me when India lost the World Cup? I told them, it's okay, man. Don't you think it's a little unfair if the one country alone keeps on winning? Yes, Prabhu. So taking that this is not our turn. Okay, I felt a little happy. And by the way, answer me this. Why did you waste time? I told you to come to temple. Why didn't you come to temple? Okay, Prabhu, I'll call you later. So point is, with anything, there has to be some investment that is actually needed there. Now, here we are saying, that when I going to the microscope example, I'm looking at the microscope. Okay, it is still biased by the knowledge. Again, we are a little prejudiced. We are saying it's not empowering. Bias can be only it's like this. All newspapers, news channels, they are all bad. They're all biased. So I won't watch any news at all. Is that the case for us? No. Amongst all of them, some may actually watch Foxtel. Some may go for CNN. Understand? Some may go for CNBC, whatever. Okay. So we always choose best among the worst. So knowledge is empowering. We just choose whatever that we are comfortable with. So to say that, oh, this is biased, I'm watchful of the time. I also need to log off. I have another class at 12. So don't worry, we'll finish this. So I'm saying, so to say that we are biased is a little biased way of saying, but knowledge is actually giving us bias. It is empowering. Yes, it's not perfect. That's why I'm saying man-made thing, none of them is perfect, but it has its use. Okay, yeah. Flight do actually come across accidents. That doesn't mean we stop taking flights. We do take our precautions, basically. That's all. So studying about God, Krishna allows us to use everything. He allows us to read the scriptures. He allows us to use our inductive method. He tells to Arjuna, when Arjuna asks about his power, hey, how can I understand your power? Last verse of the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Atavayena bahutnena kimnyatena tavarjuna vistabhyaham idam krishnam ekamsena sthito jagat. He tells about his glories, and then finally he tells to Arjuna, what is the need of all this detailed knowledge? You want to understand what my power is? Okay, you understand this much. With a single fragment of myself, I support and pervade this entire universe, which means now you use your extrapolative capacity to understand how mighty I must be. Okay, so Krishna allows us to go for inductive method also, but within the purview of the Shastras.